Hi everyone. How's everyone doing? Good. Okay. So let's start today's class. What we are going to do today is we are going to introduce some new concepts. Network data transfer. Basically making requests to a server on the internet. To be an API, a public API, it could be a website, and receive the data. And these days, the choice of format for data transfer is JSON. How many of you are familiar with this JSON concept? Like most of you seem to be familiar. You've heard about it. Okay, it's it's JavaScript object notation. And what does it do?
Like we can just it can interact with any kind of language in the world, and we can use for store the data.
It's a generic way of storing information, passing it p-value pairs. Yes. And we will also introduce a new type of view called the picker view. You know what a picker view is? How many of you use iPhone, iPad? You have, right? So when you select something, you see those slot machine type views, like if you want to select a date, you know, the thing that makes a clicking noise while you are moving, that's a picker view. So we'll be using that in this app. Okay, so this app is also the whole exercise is modeled like what you had in your midterm exam. We'll divide it into different parts. And we'll basically tackle it that way. So what this app will do is, given two currencies, so we'll make a list of currencies, and the user will be allowed to choose any two of them. So this app will make a network call, an API, a public API will find that, and it will fetch the exchange rate from that service, that's the prevailing exchange rate, and given the amount in one currency, it will convert it into the other currency. And what you will learn today is specifics of how to make a network call, interpreting the data received, and the implementation of a multi-component picker view. So here are a couple of examples of data transfer applications. The one that we're going to work on, currency exchange rates. Another one is stock quotes. Can you all think of other examples? Weather, maps, exactly. Anything you do, really, you know, if you, for example, if you use online banking, when you open a banking app which is designed for the operating system, it is displaying, it is fetching the data, what your account balance is, what the transactions are, and displaying it. So that all of that is happening in the background through network calls. And this is not just to retrieve information, you can also do other things like RESTful APIs. You heard this term, RESTful? Yeah. So basically, exchange of not just information, but also, you know, actions can be performed through that exchange. So to be able to implement this app, we need to find a public API that will allow us to retrieve the prevailing exchange rate between two currencies. So let's do that. So why don't you all fire up the Safari browser and search for currency exchange API, and I would suggest that you do this so that you can just copy the URL instead of having to type it and then possibly having typos. So when you search this on Google, you will see that
after the add, the first result is a website called exchangeratesAPI.io. If you go there, you will see that it is basically, it fits our criteria. It is a free service for current and historical foreign exchange rates. So basically, there may be other services. Some of them may require authentication, may require you to create an account, and we don't want to get into all of that. We just want to look at how all of this works. So this is what this service does. And here is an example. If you were to copy this URL, navigate to it, you will see that it will return a JSON object which has a key called rates, and these are all the rates, current rates relative to the base currency of euro. We didn't specify a base, so it assumes euro. So for example, 1 euro is about 1.46 Canadian or 77 Indian rupees. So this is the information we need really, and this is today's date. Can we narrow it down? Can we do it so that we just specify 2 currencies and it gives us that? So if we look at what else this API provides, so here is one thing we can do. Rates are quoted against the euro by default. Quote against a different currency by setting the base parameter. So if you just specify the base parameter, it will give you what you want. So for example, here, if we were to change, if I were to say base equal to CAD, it will give me everything relative to Canadian dollar. The base is now CAD. So those of you who are from foreign countries, you will see that your currency, if you know what the current rate is. So for example, with respect to the Canadian dollar, Indian rupee is 52.7. And the other one that we have in this class that I know of is the Turkish lira. It's about 4.35. So this is how we can use it, right? So we can change the base. So we know, if we know what currency is our base, we can do it from there. What about the target? It says request a specific request specific exchange rates by setting the symbols parameter. So if we were to add symbols, so for example, right now it says base equal to CAD. If I add symbols equal to USD, it will tell me that 1 Canadian dollar is about 76 US cents. Or if I change this to, it will tell me what the exchange rate with the Indian rupee is. So this seems to have all the features we want. We want to be able to get this exchange rate. And those of you who don't know what JSON object notation is, this is an example. So it's all key value pairs, rates is the key, and then colon, and this is the value. And the value itself is a JSON object in a way, which has a key and a value. And then this base is the key and the value and so on. So this is what we will use. So you can leave those tabs open. We'll be needing those URLs in a minute. So we know that the output format is JSON, and we will need to decode it to a Swift object so that we can actually use it in the calculations. Okay. Now, model view controller. We still have this written from the previous classes. People have been very kind to leave it up. You wrote. So our model, what is our model going to be doing? It will maintain a list of currencies, and given 2 currencies, it's going to get the exchange rate. That's the gist of the model. The model doesn't do anything else. It doesn't care how you display them. It doesn't care if you have labels, buttons, or whatever you have. It just does that much. It deals with currencies. The view is where we will have to have components, views that allow us to select the from currency and the to currency. Either type it, select it, do something like that. And a useful currency converter does not just give you the exchange rate. For example, let's say you're traveling. You go somewhere, you've gone to Brazil, and you're looking at something, wanting to buy something, and it costs 50 reais in local currency. You need to know how much that is in dollars or rupees or whatever, so you have just knowing the exchange rate does not help you. So we need to be able to edit it. We need to say, okay, convert this amount, so I don't have to do that calculation. And controller will provide the interaction between these two. So what we'll do is we'll start with the view. So we want to design the view. So what do we need here? Sorry? Labels for what? Currency name. To select the currencies, right? To select the from currency, drop down, right? So for that, we'll use what is called the picker view, like I described, that wheel thing, the slot machine. So the picker view will allow us, so for example, so it has, we'll give it a list of currencies. And we'll have two of these with identical. So we can just rotate them and select the from and to currencies. Okay, what else do we need? A text field to write the amount. So this is the from amount, base amount. Okay, and
Next view for the result.
for the result. Okay, so whatever it is. Okay, maybe a label with an equal to sign in between. What else?
Button for the calculation.
We could have a button. We could have a button that does a calculation.
Text view to show the text view to show the rate
Here, that's here.
for the result, like for the calculation. If I'm putting 100, so what's gonna be the result with the today?
That's what it will show.
The placement.
So this is where we put the amount. Let's say this is where you can change it. Default, let's say, is 1.
Yeah.
So when it is 1, let's say US dollar, it will show you whatever the current exchange rate is. 1.3. But you can go ahead and change this. This is editable. You can change it to 100, 200, whatever. And it will update this. Okay. So this here button may not be necessary because we could just make it so that any change here or here triggers the calculation. So it automatically does the calculation. How about the currency names? Like these currencies, like we saw in that website, they all have their 3-letter codes. If you notice, Canadian dollar was CAD, Indian rupee was INR. There are some currencies where the currency codes are not very obvious what they represent. What is TRY? Huh? Turkey, Turkish lira. What is ARS? Azerbaijan. Andhra Pradesh. The currency, okay. ARS is Argentinian peso. So there are many such. UAH. No, UAH is the currency of Ukraine. Ukrainian, and the name of the currency is, I think it's Hryvnia. It starts with HRYVNI, something like that. So, see, these things we need to show the user, right? So maybe we need a name here to display the full name of the currency, so that you know what you're looking at.
This more or less gives us the all the components we need. And what we'll also do is we'll put a label for the title of the app, and we'll put a label here with your name, who made it. Okay. So this will give us the view. What is next? The model. This was the second question in your midterm. What does the model need to do? So when this view is being populated, the controller is going to ask the model some questions to be able to build this list, for example, right? To do the other things. So what are the things that the model needs? So it says there data for each currency at the minimum 3-letter currency code. So we need to know what is the list of currencies that we are going to show in that list, right? So we need a list of currencies. And we can make it an array. What are the functions? It says right there actually. You can just read off and tell me the answers. So this controller will say, get me the list of currencies, so it can build this. So either we have a function called get list, or we can just return this object. Either possibility exists. We need to be able to set the from and to currencies. So when this selection changes, we need to send that information to the model that has changed. So what it will do is, based on that information, it will update the exchange rate. So we could have a function called update exchange rate. And it takes the from and to currencies. So that way it knows what happens. And this function will do the network call, get the exchange rate, and then supply it to the controller. And the controller can deal with whatever it needs to do, to display the exchange rate or display the converted amount. So these are the basics that we need in the model. And what it could also do is, when it gets the exchange rate, it can save it in a variable called exchange rate. And then we can have a function called get exchange rate, which the model, which the controller can call anytime to retrieve. So for example, if the currencies are not changing, only the amount is changing, and we are listening to that change, we don't need to update the exchange rate. We just get the exchange rate and multiply. Okay, that's the model. So now we can get started with this. So to do that, create a new project, a single view app, and give it the following name. So once you create the app, so use your own name, don't use my name. So it's first name underscore, last name underscore, currency. I called it exchange, but I think I asked you to call it conversion. So you can call it conversion. Okay, everybody got the project in? Created? Okay.
All right, so if you go to your storyboard, you will see something you're familiar with, a blank canvas. What we can do is we can start designing our view. So what is our instruction here? Okay, change the view's background color to your color division. Do you remember your color divisions? So change the view to something like that, the background. And to do that, you will click in the white space here and then go to the attributes and change the background. Yes, choose custom and choose from here. Okay, so once you have the background set, you can open the library of objects and start dropping those things. Let's start at the top. We'll drop a label here. And here is a trick. When you add the label, center it to the screen. As you are moving it, you will see these guidelines appear. So drop it somewhere near the top, and when this center line is showing, then select make it center aligned. Okay. And then whatever changes you make, it will remain center aligned. You don't have to do that again. So I'm going to increase its font size and change it to you can choose a font color that is more pleasing to the eye. Okay. Same thing we'll do at the bottom. You can make a copy of this. Just press Alt while you're dragging it and put your name here. Okay, so those two done. Those were the simple ones. Let's add the text field. This time you have to just use your judgment on where to place it, how big to make it, and then make a copy of it. Okay. So these are the ones we'll use for our currency, the amounts. I'll put a default amount of 1.0 in both, and it looks kind of small, so make it bigger. And this one, what we can do is for aesthetics, we can make this right aligned and leave this left aligned. Okay, so this one, I'll change this to right aligned. So it will look like this. Okay. And we will need 3 more labels, one for the equal to sign and 2 for the currency names. And this one, I just want it to, I will center align it and change this to equals. And change its font color to whatever other color that you are using. Okay, so at this point, these are set up. So this is where we'll enter the from amount. This is where the to amount will get displayed. We need now a label to show the name. So we'll drop labels right here. So okay, so this label on the left, we will make it right aligned and then change its text to from currency name. So that's where it will display the from currency name. And the one on the right, we will leave it left aligned and call it to currency name. You can use the colors that you are using for these. Okay. So now we've got everything other than the picker view to select the currencies. So let's add the picker view now. So go to your library of objects and type pick. It will show you two options, date picker and picker view. If you were implementing something that required the user to select a date, this is what you could use. In our case, we are going to use just a picker view. You drag and drop it in the lower half somewhere. It takes up the whole width of the canvas, which is fine, which is the way we want it. Okay. So that is our basic. This is what it is, picker view. Okay. Now then, if you run this app, you should see the design you have done. So this number is editable. Should this text field be editable? The one on the right, no, right? So let's change that. We'll go to the Xcode and select that text field, and in the attributes inspector, if you keep scrolling, you will see a section called control. And in control, there is a state that you can select, and it is enabled right now. So we'll just change it. We'll remove this enabled. So unselect the enabled. So then it will not be editable any longer. It won't activate when you click on it. So it doesn't let me do anything there. Here it shows the cursor, here it doesn't. Okay. Everybody up to this point? Same error. Change the team. Go to the project settings. Signing error for you also. Not building, not running. We'll try to resolve it, but let's move on for now. We'll fix it later. Let's build the other parts. So go back to your storyboard and start the assistant editor. It should open the view controller.swift in the assistant editor through automatic selection. Now what we want to do is we want to create all the outlets. What are the outlets we need? Out of these components we have added, which ones? This one, this one, both names, very good. And this is picker view.
So these are the things that we are either changing or reading. So these are the IV outlets. What about IV actions? Picker view. Whenever it changes, we need to have an action. What else is going to change? That also will need it. This amount will change, right? You can type this. So this also needs an action. So let's start with the outlets. So as before, we'll use some comments here. We'll create a comment section called outlets, and we'll start making the outlets. So let's do all 4 of these. Make sure you're dragging the right outlet to the right components. You should see when you're doing these two, the number fields, it should say text field here. To call it from amount. It built there? Same. Okay, same project. Can you copy the project here? So to amount and the names. From currency name and to currency name. And then the picker view. So one thing you will notice is that as you move this, as you are, this one will call currency picker. And what I want to show you is when you are creating an outlet for, let's say, this to currency name, when you do a control drag, if you are on another label, it highlights that. And if you were to release it here, it will connect this to that. So be very careful when you're doing this. Just make sure wherever you drop it, it is showing this blue line with the circle. So these are our 5 outlets. Yes, so what happens is this picker view. Very good question. Let's look at the documentation. So this is the documentation for the picker view. A view that uses a spinning wheel or slot machine metaphor to show one or more sets of values. So within the same, see, a picker view displays one or more wheels that the user manipulates to select items, each wheel known as a component. So the same picker view, so for example, the date picker, it's actually a picker view implemented specifically to select dates. And it's got 3 wheels, month, day, year. In the same way here, we can divide it into 2, from currency and to currency, and that we will do in the code. That will happen in the code. So right now, we just have these. And if we were to run it right now again, it will show the same as before. We haven't really done anything else. The picker view is still blank here. Okay. So how do we populate it? So for that, we need to implement what are known as the delegate and the data source. So data source, as the name suggests, it's a class of a certain type. In the picker view documentation, you will see that
You provide the data to be displayed in your picker view using a picker data source, an object that adopts this protocol, UI picker view data source protocol. So you can create a class that adopts this protocol. Any class, it can have any name. What does it mean to adopt the protocol? To implement methods. So a protocol is Swift language for interface in Java. You all know what an interface is? It's basically abstraction of functionality. So in the same way, a protocol allows that. So any class that implements that protocol will have a certain set of functions. Like for example, in this case, get me the data for the picker. Or how many rows does it have, how many components, all of this. So that's the data source. And delegate is a class that adopts that protocol, the picker view delegate protocol. It provides views for displaying your data and responding to user selection. So what that means is that in your picker view, you can have either only text, which it does by default, or you can say, I want a mixture of text and images, or I want to change its color, different lines of different colors. All of that flexibility you have through the delegate. You can implement a method called get view for row number, just like in the table, in the tic-tac-toe. You remember there was a place where we were building the cell, and we could choose the one, whether the user one or the last image and text and everything. Same kind of functionality. So we'll implement these two. So in your code, how do we do that? What we'll do is, instead of creating a class that implements those protocols, we'll just implement those protocols in the view controller. So view controller will also become an object of that type. So right here, so view controller is the class we have, Xcode created for us, and it is a subclass of UI view controller. So just add here. If you start typing here, UI picker, it will give you the options, and you want both of these, data source and delegate. So first we'll select the delegate. Are you with? Okay, that's good. That's progress. So choose these two, picker view delegate and picker view data source. Okay, so everybody up to this point? And do you see this error? You do? If you click on it, it's going to say view controller does not conform to. So it says that it does not conform, although we have said that it is, implementing this protocol, it's adopting this protocol, it does not conform because those functions it needs are missing. If you say fix, it's going to add these functions. And the thing it does is, Xcode does is, it adds these functions to the top of the thing, and generally that's not a good practice. You want to start with variables, outlets at the top. So what we will do is we will move it to the bottom. So just cut this and paste it at the bottom. And here we'll add a comment. Describe what they are. Okay. So at this point, these two functions got added, number of components and number of rows in component. So we said that we are going to have two wheels. We'll divide it into two. So that is our number of components. So here we need to return 2. And for now, just for testing how it looks, we are just going to return a dummy number of rows. So this will change to return 2. And let's say we want half a dozen rows. Okay. So no change. What happened? We're not seeing 6 rows, 2 wheels. The thing is that we have the picker view here, an object, the outlet to it, but we haven't told it where the data source is. We have to assign the data source. So we have to tell that picker view that your data source is this same class. So we'll do that here. Choose, start typing currency picker, and you will get this dot data source. Elf, the same object that we are in. And the same thing for the delegate. This way it knows where the data is, and then it will actually call those functions that we have added. So if you run your code now, you will see something different, right? So right now we are not saying what the values are, but we are saying that there are two of these wheels and half a dozen rows. So it is showing me half a dozen question marks on each side. Up to this point? So we are saying 2 wheels and 6 elements in each, regardless of, see here you could have different number of components in each. It allows that. It will request them separately for component 0 and component 1. We have 2 wheels. So you could have it's like, for example, in the date picker, it's going to have 12 for month and 30 or 31 for the day. Okay. So how about this? Now, instead of question mark, why don't we start showing the stuff that we want to show? So for that, we need to add another function. And all the picker view function are called start with picker view. So if you type func and pi, you will see that what your options are. So for example, the first one, you can set the width for component. So you can make them uneven. One wheel can be wider than the other. Row height for component. So they could have different row heights. Did select row. This is what is invoked when the selection changes. But for now, what we want is this title for row. So this title for row, what it does is this function is called when it's building the picker view. It will say, okay, I'm in the first wheel and the first element. What is the title? What is it supposed to display? So since we don't have the list of currencies yet, we'll just say currency and the row number. So it will say currency 1, or in this case, well, let's make it row plus 1. Any idea why row plus 1? Yeah, otherwise it will start from 0. We want to start from 1. Okay, so once you add this function, you will see now instead of question marks, you should see the currency 1, currency 2, etc. Okay, let's implement the model now. So we can, instead of having dummy values, currency 1, currency 2, we have actual names. So this is what we'll do. As before, right click on this and say new file. So that's where we'll place our model. And we'll choose a Swift file. We don't want to any fancy stuff, just a blank Swift file. Okay, so it gave us the new file. I'm going to close this. So this is the file. It created this file for us. So here we'll create the class. The currency conversion model class. Fourth title for row. Yeah. Okay, so this here, what we want is, if you look on the blackboard, we have a variable list of currencies. And it's an array. So this is where we'll put our list of currencies. For example, Canadian dollar. What else do we want to see there? We can just pick USD. Okay. GBP. OMR. OMR is Omani Real. Okay. North Korean currency. Well, we can have the South Korean. KRW. Okay, and one more that is in this class, TRY. Okay, anybody else who wants their home currency listed here? Okay, good. So we've got like 8 of them here. GBP is British pound, Great Britain, the world champions, more or less. Okay, so we have this. What we will do now is we'll use it. So do you remember there was a question in your exam that after you create the model, to use it, you have to do something. What do you have to do? You have the model class. To be able to use it, we need an object. We need to instantiate it. So let's do that. So this will give us an object of the model class. So that's how we get the model. And now what we can do is, instead of saying that there are 6 components, hard coding it, we can actually get the list of currencies and return its size, which is this count variable. So add this line to get an object here, and then you can change this. Number of rows in component is actual number of currencies. Okay, and then what do we put here to show the actual symbol? So here right now we are returning currency 1, currency 2. Instead of that, we want to say CAD, USD, GBP. So what do we need here? So here is where we got the number of elements. So if we need only one of those elements, we just need to refer to that array. Conversion model dot list of currencies and the row number. So for the first row, when the row is 0, it will give us the first code here. For the second one, the second. So with these changes, you should be able to see now, instead of currency 1, currency 2, you will see the actual currency names. Okay. This is what we added. So you're seeing the list of currencies now? Okay. So now what we want to do is when we change the selection, we want to know that something changed. So what we'll do is we'll implement another function here. If you type function and just pi, it will again give you a list of functions, and what we want is this one, did select row. So did select row is what is triggered when a row changes, as the name suggests. Okay. And it tells us what was the change, what is the new selected row, and which component it affected. So if it's the first wheel, it will say component is 0. And what was the new selection? What was the new row? So the third row, it will return that row number appropriately. So this will tell us about the change that just happened, one wheel, right? But we may have changed the previously the second wheel, or it may be the same value as it was initialized at. So in here, let's just for now print selected. Okay, so this will just validate for now. If we add this print statement and run it, and then we'll be able to see in the debug output what changes are happening. So I'm changing something here, okay? So it's telling me selected 2 and 0, basically the second 0, 1, 2 in the first wheel. So the fifth element in the second. So this is the information we are getting here. Okay, now we need to keep track of what is in each wheel. So we have two options. One is every time we come here, whenever something is changed, we find out what's in the second wheel. Or we can locally just store what was the from and what was the to value at the start. And every time it changes, we update it. It will come to this function whenever it changes, and we will update. Okay. So why don't we here at the top declare a couple of variables? Let's call it from index and initialize it to 0, and initialize the to index also to 0. So you'll add these two lines. From index and to index both initialized to 0. And now when it comes here in this, we will check whether it's the first wheel, from, or to. And if it's from, then we will update the from value, otherwise we'll update the to value. So if component is 0, then we will change the from index to become row. Else, otherwise to index. Okay. So now we know what is in each. Selection of each wheel we will be tracking here. And over here, what this does is it tells us which currency. So we can extract it from the array from currency by using the from index, and in a very similar way we'll get the to currency also. This tells us the 3-letter codes of the two currencies, the pair that is selected. So we will print a statement now and we'll see what those are. So we got we updated the from index and the to index based on whatever was supplied here, the component and the row number. And then we got the 3-letter codes, and we are printing a statement which tells us what were the two 3-letter codes. So let's see what it's doing now. Okay, so now if I change this to USD, I want to see a debug output that says convert from USD to CAD, which is what it is showing me. Let's try something else, USD to GBP. So this is what you should be seeing in your debug output, which means it is tracking the activity correctly. Okay, so now what do we do? At this point, we can call this function update the exchange rate, which we haven't implemented yet. So we will implement that next. And that's in our model. So go to your model. And we will implement this function now. Call it update exchange rate, and it is going to take 2 arguments. The from currency and the to currency. Yes, so this is what we will pass here when we call this function. Okay, and this function needs to be called from here. So to do that, we'll say conversion model dot update exchange rate. It will fill this up for us, and here so here what we can do, if you put an underscore before this variable names, what that does is it makes this label optional whenever you're calling the function. So if I were to delete this and then again say conversion model dot update, okay, I need to save this. So it saves. Now it is not going to have any labels. I can just say from currency to currency. So it is passing those 2 arguments. You don't have to supply a label like we had to for other things. So this is the trick. You add an underscore and then make sure you have a space between the underscore and the actual variable name. So underscores allows you to, they allow you to skip labeling the arguments. So this is where it will make the API call. For now, I'm just going to put a print statement and we'll see if this is getting printed. Okay, so the function call is coming here. This is where we'll put that API we saw in the beginning of the class. We'll build the URL that we need based on these two currencies. We'll make a call to it. We'll get the data. We'll parse it. We'll get the exchange rate. We'll use it. And all of that we'll do after the break. So if you guys want, you can take a 20-minute break. We'll resume at 4:35.